Hello everyone, and welcome back to Age of Mythology Divine Edition. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the newest pantheon to be added to the game, the Lakota. The Lakota have three major gods, being Wi, Ansimaka, and Haihan Kaga. Beginning the game, you will notice that the Lakota do not start with a scout. This is because one of the villages is intended to be used as that scout. You'll also notice that they cannot gather gold. The Lakota villager, known as the Kuwa, cannot mine from any given gold mine. This means that... well, that's a terrible spot for market, but let's do it anyways. In the Archaic Age, their method of gaining gold comes either from selling resources at the Archaic Age market, or by purchasing caravans. In the Archaic Age, you may train up to 5 dog caravans, which are slow, weak, and inefficient, but also cheap and do not cost population. Every time you migrate, which we'll get to soon, you will be able to train 5 more of these dogs. It is generally advantageous to have as many of these dogs as possible. The house and resource drop-off point for the Lakota is the Thicketia. You may train them for 20 wood from your town center. You may then move them to any given location, for example by this wood line, and spend 5 wood to transform them into a house that provides 5 population, stores all resources, trains all human soldiers, and may be packed up for free and moved elsewhere. In this packed form, they will still act as a resource drop-off point, but they will not give population, and also are much weaker. As you can see, they have 20 HP and 20 of each armor, while in house form they have 300 HP and far better armor. This means that as you are chopping down trees, if you need to move your resource drop-off point closer to the wood line, it is often advantageous to not treat it as an ox cart and instead turn it into the actual Thicketia. Building a temple and advancing to the Classical Age, we will see the most disruptive aspect of the Lakota. When they age up to the Classical Age, they will gain a number of free units, including several packed Thicketias, some villagers, some cavalry, and a hero. At this point, their town center becomes a dead town center. Dead town centers still act as resource drop-off points, but they cannot train units, they do not provide population space, and they cannot be deleted. Moreover, though they can trade, they do so at half efficiency. This means that it is imperative that you quickly build another town center somewhere else. This is why scouting is quite important, and why you might actually want to start building your base, as temples cannot be picked up and moved, unlike houses, somewhere by the town center that you actually intend to take. Fortunately for the Lakota, though, their town centers are quite cheap. Upon completing a town center, you get some more free units, and some units corresponding to your major god. So for example, Wi offers several trees that appear right by the town center and can be chopped down for easy wood. The Lakota Tower is the sod house. Sod houses only fire arrows when a villager is garrisoned inside of them. Oh, that's what's going on there. They also do not get guard tower or watchtower, and you can increase the build limit by researching migrations. Every time you complete a migration successfully, you may research this technology once. They may also be made 15% more resistant to hack damage. They do gain signal fires and in later ages carrier pigeons, and for 5 wood may be transformed into a Thicketia. This can be quite handy in the early game where you are willing to sacrifice your defenses in exchange for not having the town center time needed to train more Thicketia. At the town center, you may train your major god's technologies, which all cost some amount of gold and some amount of favor. The Lakota gather favor by building ribbon gardens. Ribbon gardens will slowly generate favor over time. Ribbon gardens may also train medicine women who can empower the ribbon gardens in order to make them gain more favor. The unique aspect of ribbon gardens is that they can train for some favor amounts of food. For example, for 2 favor, you can create a berry bush, which will give you 100 food. For 10 favor, starting from the Archaic Age, you may summon 3 bison for 10 favor. They are summoned more or less randomly in the area, and you will have to find and hunt them down. Each of them offers 300 food. Starting in the Classical Age, you may now summon 7 bison for 20 favor, essentially getting 1 free bison as compared to the 10 favor bison tech. Your Classical Age Minor Gods technologies may be researched at the Ribbon Garden. All Lakota human soldiers that can be trained are trained from the Thicketia. In the Classical Age, there's only one such soldier, the Wakukeza. The Wakukeza is your standard infantry, good against cavalry, and gains a significant bonus against siege that other civilizations would save for their villages. This is because Lakota villagers attack all enemy units with their ranged bow attack. Notably, this means that they can 1v1 an unupgraded Toxotes, meaning that they are actually a pretty strong archer unit. In the Classical Age, they are also your only archer unit. This means that if you are facing a civilization that wants to build a large number of infantry units, it might be best waiting until the Heroic Age before you aggress upon them, because you want your villagers to be at home working on gathering resources and not off on the front lines fighting, even if they are capable archers. The Lakota infantry and archers, you will be able to see in the Heroic Age, can be transformed for some cost into a Akasita unit. An Akasita unit is a mounted unit that is unique to each minor god. For example, we advance through Wani, so we can transform our Wakukeza into fancy spears. Note that you gain a small number of them for free upon initializing a migration and completing a migration. This is the case for all minor gods. Every Akasita unit has a unique trait. For example, the fancy spears is that it has a very high attack, being 18 hack unupgraded, but also has very low HP, being only 79. This makes them great raiding units, as long as the units they're raiding don't turn around and fight back, but also means that they're quite fragile and susceptible to being focus fired. This also means that they do not make very good units for fighting under town center or tower fire. In the Classical Age, we may see that the Economic Guild and Armory for the Lakota have been turned into one building. This building can also be picked up and moved around. Due to unknown reasons, by the way, you will have to reselect it after transforming it in order to reset your technology. But yeah, that's just Age of Mythology for you. All economic technologies may be researched at the Guild Fire, as well as all armory technologies. Because of this, it can often be advisable to build multiple guild fires, as they only cost 50 wood and build relatively quickly. Here you may research technologies that are common to all of the major gods. For example, Akita, which only costs 50 gold, gives Yakuwa and medicine women 4 more line of sight. This can be useful when you're scouting with Yakuwa in the early game, and it gives them a very large line of sight as opposed to all other villagers. Your medicine women as heroes are actually fairly weak. They don't have great damage, they're generally worse than priests in most circumstances, and their range is quite low. However, they do heal other units extremely rapidly, more rapidly than any other hero, making them great support. They are also the only hero that the Lakota has access to aside from one specific minor god technology. Let's send these guys here to build an outpost settlement. Due to the fact that the Lakota can only have one town center at any time, even though their town center gains 15 population space every time they migrate, they may still want to be able to occupy settlement space, both for the settlement win condition and for an additional 5 population. Outpost settlements do not train units and can trade at half efficiency and only give 5 population, but if you do not have a town center, as you can see I can't click this now, but when we advance to the Heroic Age through say Anonyte, we can now transform this for full price into a town center immediately. As you can see, with this heroic age migration, we gain significantly more free units, including significantly more free bison. Even more free units over here. In the heroic age, actually this was the classical age technology, but let's talk about it now. Timsilla foraging allows your Kuba to gather food from berry bushes 5 times as quickly. This has great synergy with Yupsi, which creates a berry bush very quickly. This helps if you need food now, though it is far less efficient than the summoning bison. As in the heroic age, you can now summon 12 bison for 30 favor, which is a significant improvement. How did you end up over there? That is our classical age myth unit. Just as our classical age technologies are researchable at the Ribbon Garden, our heroic age technologies can be researched at the temple. Going back here, after researching Timsilla foraging, we can now do Timsilla braiding, which allows Kuba to carry twice as much food, which is quite handy when we summon a bunch of bison, and they are spread all over the map, and we want to move from bison to bison without having to move a Thicketia around to follow the villages so they have good gathering. Instead, you can send, say, 10 villages to one bison, they pick up a bunch of food, go to the next one, pick up a bunch of food, go to the next one, pick up a bunch of food, and then deposit it. This does, however, mean that you will gain food less regularly, even if it will be more efficient over time. Kisiso, I think that's how it's pronounced, is a technology that allows your medicine women, when they're empowering a ribbon garden, to gain favor 50% more quickly. This is an extremely significant technology, though it costs a full 300 gold, which, as you might remember, is difficult for the Lakota to get. Even though, being in an advanced age, they can train more dog caravans, and they can actually train proper caravans for one population, 100 food, that are identical to other civilizations' caravans, they often will find they still need to sell in order to get gold. This means that tax collective is a very useful technology for them. Finally, medicine women may convert enemy villages in order to build defensive buildings in siege. Let's send one over here to convert some of these villages. This is because Lakota villages do not build any fortress type unit. This also means they cannot get siege units, and also they cannot build walls. In order to do any of these things, you must convert an enemy villager with a medicine woman. In the heroic age, your new soldier is the Waoka. The Waoka is a fairly standard archer, which may, for the same cost as, well, not the same cost as before, but for a similar cost, be transformed into a cavalry archer. As before, with the Wakugeza and being able to transform into the cavalry unit corresponding to the minor guard. Come on, let's go away. Let's run. So anyways, similar to how the cavalry unit, the Akasita that you got from the Wakugeza, was dependent on your minor guard, similarly, your Waoka transforms into a cavalry archer that is, again, unique to the minor guard. In this case, the Crow Rider, which is a swift and fast-firing cavalry archer that can maintain a high rate of fire. Now that we have some laborers, we can build a Migdal stronghold. We can also build some walls. And from this, we can train siege units. For example, the siege tower from the Egyptians. Notably, the Lakota, while they may get gates, do not get any wall upgrades. This is not a civilization with which you will be walling the entire map off. What else can be discussed in the heroic age? Your major god will get more technologies available at the town center. I guess we have the additional migrations, but we already mentioned that. I think that's everything for the heroic age, so let's go to the mythic age. In the mythic age, you will notice we do not automatically migrate. Instead, we may choose to migrate at any time. This will give us a large number of resources, a large number of free units, both at the beginning and the end of the migration, and will make our town center go all the way up to 60 population space, which, if you recall, is the same population space granted by any other civilization, aside from ISIS, with 3 fortified town centers. You will notice that the Lakota do not get fortified town centers. They do, however, get masons and architects. The buildings, though, overall are quite weak, meaning that they, if they're fighting another Lakota, don't really need siege. Another reason why they don't need a lot of siege is because of the Campi, their Mythic Age infantry unit. The Campi is perhaps somewhat comparable to a more versatile destroyer, given that they are good against buildings, and also, to some extent, against infantry. The Campi may be transformed into a powerful cavalry unit, corresponding to a Mythic Age Minor God, in this case the Raven Keeper, who is good against myth units and also heroes. The Lakota have the best cavalry units in the game. As you can see, this particular one here, despite only costing 3 population and 40 food, 30 gold, plus 70 food, 50 gold, making it extremely expensive, has 50% pierce armor, 28% hack armor, 20 hack damage, and 155 health, in addition to a significant bonus against enemy myth units and heroes. This essentially makes them just a better Jarl, and only costs, as I said, 3 population. You may upgrade your warriors in Akasita with normal line upgrades, and levy warriors allows your warriors to train more quickly. This is quite handy because even though Thicketia only giving 5 population and being quite cheap and easy to build, do not train units quickly. So if you want to train units quickly, for example, you want to train some Wakugeza very quickly in order to deal with an enemy siege push, you will want to get levy. Because even if you have a whole bunch of Thicketia just sitting about, it will still take a while for that first wave of Wakugeza to show up. Finally, in the Mythic Age, going back to our guild fire, we can see that all of the armory techs are available. Note that when a tech is researching, it cannot be picked up and moved elsewhere. And of course, they do not get access to any of the mining or any of the farming technologies because they can't farm and they cannot mine. That being said, laborers and other villages you capture can mine, but because they will not have any upgrades, this makes them relatively slow at it, and you will still want to rely entirely upon trade, or almost entirely. You see, is there anything else to mention? All villagers can build wonders, however, the fact that the Lakota have such minimal defensive structures generally means that their wonders are not particularly viable. However, even in the late game, despite the fact that sod houses only fire when garrisoned, which means they're not as useful for towers and holding a position, you can just send a bunch of villagers in and have them fire arrows at things. This is, of course, suicidal, but it demonstrates the point. Important to note is that this means that villagers cannot attack buildings with any degree of large-scale damage. However, because villagers are so numerous, it's not like they're terrible against buildings, it's just they're nowhere near as good as other civilizations' villages. If we want to discuss some form of strategy for the Lakota, I would strongly recommend thinking about their economy as being entirely food and wood-based, and then get a extremely large trade caravan route off of the back of it. Because the earlier you build your market, the sooner you can start trading your dogs, which means you're essentially getting a kind of 2TC beginning, since the dog caravans will gather gold a little bit worse than the average villager would. So in the early game, you can get a strong economy, and especially if you build your market far away from wherever your second town center is. So for example, if this was going to be a second town center, we would really want to build the market somewhere over here. And that's another great reason why scanning with the villager is important. Because once you find your first settlement, you run to the other side of the map and you build a market. Or you bring that villager back to the center and send one of the villagers in the center over to build a market on the edge of the map. So once you have all this going, I generally find that I'm swimming in resources, but at the same time, it can be somewhat difficult to spend them all properly. Because with all of the wood and gold you're getting, with villagers that gather hunt more quickly than normal and gather wood at the normal Greek rate, you do find that the units training relatively slowly from the Thicketias means that it takes a little bit to actually muster a military force. In addition, your favor requires gold to generate, because each ribbon garden costs 50 gold, meaning that in order to get a massive amount of myth units, or research all of your technologies, you are going to need quite a few of them. In addition, medicine women cost gold, so if you want a medicine woman on each of your ribbon gardens to get maximum favor in order to have maximum amounts of bison being summoned in an area, once again, you're gonna probably need to trade. I also highly recommend getting tax collectors for that same reason. I find personally that the Lakota do not necessarily need siege, as many of their myth units are exceptionally good at siege. For example, the Zuzekazuya, which is a snake archer, is quite good against buildings. And the Waniathanka is extremely good against buildings. Perhaps the best unit against buildings is the Thunderbird, which is a Heroic Age myth unit that is unfortunately not available to Wii. All of the Mythic Age god powers, though, have some form of destructive, with this one perhaps being the most absolute of them. Anything that is in this range, aside from Titans, Titan Gates, and Wonders, will inevitably be killed. This can be good for pushing through a heavily fortified position, but be aware that it does damage own units. With military compositions in the classical age, like I said, you really want your Kuai to be your primary archer. They're good at filling this role. But overall, you really want to rely on your cavalry. As I've said before, they are the strongest cavalry of any civilization, and by a significant margin at that. So you will want to rely heavily upon them. When fully upgraded, units like the Champion Ravenkeeper become basically unstoppable as far as population efficiency goes. But the Lakota do struggle very hard against other civilizations in the Mythic Age. The Heroic Age Lakota are very difficult for someone to defend against because of all of their free units from the migration and the fact that they gain all of these powerful archer and cavalry units. But once the opponent starts researching stuff like crenellations and gets a whole bunch of towers up in the late game, their force becomes largely removed. In addition, the fact that they can only have one town center at any one given time means that they are extremely weak to disaster god powers like Earthquake, Meteor, and Tornado. And that's one of the reasons why you might actually want to focus on getting an outpost settlement somewhere, so that when your opponent does earthquake your entire base, destroys all of your Thicketia, and wrecks your economy, you can just immediately click and have a town center somewhere else on the map. It isn't good, but it is better than immediately losing the game. All in all, the Lakota have a very, very defensive early game because they are almost impossible to raid. They are good. Their villagers can shred things like Zeus Hoplites, they can shred Kopesh warriors, and they can even do very well against Loki Herser, which means that their main weakness comes when they are migrating, as if your opponent denies your town center, they deny you all future villages. The Classical Age is somewhat difficult to deny, but the Heroic Age is a major weak spot for the Lakota. If you are facing them and you are able to deny this Heroic Age migration, you probably just won the game. On the other hand, if you just let it happen and don't punish them in any manner, shape, or form, all of their free units are probably going to come and shred you afterwards, so you have to do some sort of map control to harass them during this Heroic Age migration. In the Heroic Age, after this migration, is when the Lakota are the most powerful, with extremely strong myth units, great ordinary units, and the ability to push hard and finally begin building their siege units and their fortresses with converting enemy units. Also, all of their Heroic Age god powers are generally pretty good. There's a more powerful curse that turns enemy units into these decrepit old men that can barely fight. Fruit of the Garden here causes your deer women, which are similar to medicine women in that they convert enemy units much faster and have no recharge time, which means that they are great for building an army of villages. And the final Mythic Age god power is... what was it? There was... it's the Thunderbirds god power. Yeah, that one I won't tell you about, and I'm just gonna wait until I do the video on Wakinian, because it's a fun god power. It's very flashy. I'm certain you'll like it. Anyways, though, that is the general overview of the Lakota. They are a difficult civilization to play, even though their military is very simple and their buildings are very simple. Since they only have 6 military units, only 3 of them are trainable. They can only build a handful of actual buildings. Their mechanics, being their not mining gold, not farming, needing to constantly summon more hunt in the late game, having to rely entirely on trade for their gold. All of that makes them a difficult civilization to play. Played optimally, I think they would be extremely strong, borderline overpowered in this state. In fact, I would say it's definitely overpowered in this state if played perfectly. But it is extremely difficult to do so, especially when facing a competent opponent that will attack you where you are weakest. Anyways though, hope you enjoy, and see you when I start making all of the videos on the major and minor gods. Have a good one.